Our minds are complex, and remote viewing requires the use of two of them, the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. My slump was my subconscious mind's way of telling me that I wasn't listening. And even if I was, it demanded that I slow down and listen enough to realize that it speaks to me in its own language, a language I had yet to take the time to listen to, map out, and use as a tool. If you're stuck, it may be because you need to be for just a moment. Your subconscious may be telling you that it can see you and it doing a better job working together in a different way. But you have to surrender. So without further ado, here are the techniques that have helped me break through my remote viewing slump as well as improve my accuracy. Now, much of the visualization information I owe to Dave too. If you don't follow him yet, you really should. His channel is amazing and the link is below. The first things I'll mention are reoccurring meditations I try to pack in as many days of the week as I can. Then I'll go into my checklist before starting an RV session. The meditations that have helped me the most are self-hypnosis and visualization meditations, as well as a visual proprioceptive sort of shamanic journeying. For self-hypnosis, I would recommend that you try the Betty Erickson 5-4-3-2-1 method. I would do this daily while repeating phrases once in the trance state that you feel are important, such as, I'm an accurate remote viewer, or my remote viewing speed is excellent, or I excel at detailed visualization, and so on. What's cool about this technique is that it actually uses visualization within it. And every other time that I do this technique, I'll actually close my eyes and use my mind to visualize objects instead of just focusing on objects with my naked eyes. The shamanic journeying should be a visual and spatial exercise where your focus is in surrendering yourself to the will of your subconscious. It's hard in the beginning stages of RV to pin down what made the magic thing happen that one time and not this time. As such, and as our culture dictates, we tend to impress our will on the RV process, which robs us of a state of curiosity and shuts down intuition by forcing us to feel like we must seek and create rather than where the real magic is, which is simply in surrender and consistently working from a place of neutrality and receptivity. So, recommend that you guys create a space visually and make it three-dimensional. Keep it simple in the beginning, like a simple floor that is wide and vast, or it could be the size of your closet or the room that you're in, whatever feels right to you. Give it one color or none, bland even. The goal is really to keep it simple. And above this floor is a space. Feel this space proprioceptively. How large or small does it feel in relation to your room that you're in? The goal is to work the visual muscles of your mind slowly and allow plenty more to be created by your subconscious. So how does the space feel? Is it cramped, peaceful, quiet? That said, when you're ready, stop willing. Stop creating. Just sit there in the space that you've created in your mind and set the intention to your subconscious that for the duration of the meditation, you hand yourself over to it. From here on, simply ask it once to add details one at a time slowly that it chooses to add into your room. Then just wait, observe, notate to yourself what occurs, if anything, and let go of any outcome. The more you practice allowing your subconscious to take the reins, the better you'll get at remote viewing. I promise. This is the number one thing, if I could recommend, that got me out of my slump, was releasing control and allowing my subconscious to create whatever it wanted. This practice is a great first step in increasing visualization skills, thanks Dave too, and also in increasing your ability to let go and surrender to the process. Most people won't even believe that this is possible, but your subconscious does this all the time when you're on the signal line and you're remote viewing. You don't create these visuals that you get. Some part of you is taking the data and presenting it. So allow that to happen and try getting better at softening your focus and allowing it to happen. Before each session, here's my checklist, and I will not do a session unless all of these are met. Do I physically feel up to this? Am I physically in a space that will allow me the time and lack of distractions to do this well? Am I excited and or curious about discovering the target and the tasking? Can I approach this session with an emotional state of irreverence, neutrality, or subtle curiosity regarding the outcome? Mental and emotional invitation, I send that to the target with the intention to connect. Like I'll actually speak it out loud to the target like it's there with me. And I do this before I even start remote viewing. For some reason, giving myself 10 or 20 minutes before doing it and sending that invitation out, I visualize it rippling out into the universe. And I don't continue unless I feel a catch, a pull, an impulse that says, oh, that's the target. I ping it, and if it pings me back and says, yeah, come connect, I will always connect with it. And if I don't feel that, I'll just wait. For me, I do just a quick visualization. It's strange, but it's like a stack of dots, and the dots I represent as the target, whatever that is. And I visualize my consciousness dripping down like honey over the dots and filling all the spaces around the dots slowly, dotted layer by layer until it just oozes down to the bottom. And over time, that mixture of my consciousness and the dots begin to kind of melt. Maybe imagine M&Ms in a clear plastic tube and pouring warm honey onto them, like very hot honey. Just that melding, allow it to occur. There's a sweetness to it, right? So my subconscious is speaking right now. It's speaking symbolically. This is a lot of what I use in my remote viewing, this sort of odd visuals with shamanic journeying and intention and emotion. So that's a great example of how my subconscious speaks to me. And then of course, a 5 to 10 minute cool down. For me personally, I close my eyes and draw a circle with energy, intent, and emotion. All literally, as if I'm doing a magical ritual, I will cast a circle before me with my fingers. And as I'm casting it, I'll see a coloration. The color doesn't matter. The specifics don't matter. It's all about your intention, your emotional connection to it, and what you want to get out of it. So I cast that. And usually it's a circle made out of curiosity. It's sort of like my inner 8-year-old gets to do this fun thing. That's sort of my drive that I'm charging the circle with. I then trace the TRN in the circle. And then after saying whatever the TRN is, if the TRN is really long, you can shorten it to just a symbol like a star or a circle or even a dot. It doesn't matter. Again, this is all about intention. And then as soon as I do the TRN, I explode out of it like David Morehouse would do. Just shoot out of it. Now what's interesting is you're doing this in your 3D proprioceptive space. So when you do this, it doesn't go away. For whatever reason, that shape becomes a 3D thing that you can twist and turn and move around, and it will stay there for the duration of your session. For me, that's my ideogram. It's a spatial ideogram, and I reference different sections of it throughout the remote viewing session. Now here's the key. I pick up the initial impression. This may have been what came to me 20 minutes back when I was doing dishes and I sent out my initial invitation to it. But that thing I mentioned, that hook, that impulse, if you take a second and tune into it, there may be a visual component to it, or a spatial component, or an emotional component, whatever it is for you. That's the key. That is the first step. And I found that if I focus on that initial strongest impulse, my accuracy is incredible. Whereas if I say, oh, okay, there was this, it looked like a 2x4 thing flying in from the side, I don't know what that is, and then I move on to the next thing, you're telling your mind that wasn't important enough, and I'm putting my attention elsewhere. So 9 times out of 10 for me, the initial impulse is correct. It's the one to follow. So let's see here. I keep my left brain busy by tracing the section of the ideogram while I'm just allowing whatever data to come in. I keep it busy by letting it move the ideogram in space. And then I'll keep going over individual sections of the ideogram. And I do this in an intentional way. First, I'm mining it for emotional data. How does it make me feel to be here? And I do this intentionally, emotion first, because I want to keep the aperture wide so that I'm not painting myself into a corner. If I started out with what's the literal thing that I'm seeing with visual flashes, I might see something that informs me through an AOL that there were all these strings and chords and wood, so it must be a piano, right? Start out vague, right? Think of a movie. A movie starts out vague. A movie, in the beginning, you might be picking up things at first, but that's not the whole movie. That's just the start of it, right? When I approach my remote viewing like that, it goes a lot better. So I start by going through each section of the ideogram, and I'm just mining for emotional information. And then I'll stop. I'll go through it one more time and see if there's any more emotional data I can squeeze out of each section. If not, okay. And you'll know, because you just will pick up nothing. And instead of saying, damn it, I'm picking up nothing, embrace that it's nothing. That's your subconscious telling you, stop, we've got enough. Move on to the next section, which is, for me, symbolic data. So this gets into the realm of this is like this, or I'm blanking on the terms, but like when you say one thing is like another to describe something. And I'll get into a real life example of that in a moment here. So I found that this combination dances well together and still allows my mind to work from a blank canvas, because I haven't declared anything yet to be literal. Now recently, Birdie spoke on the Psychic Guys, awesome channel by the way, about treating all data that you get in your session as correct. I like this. I like her approach. I like this softer approach, right? Because it allows you to come into the space forgiving and honoring anything that comes in. Whereas for me personally in the past, things that if they didn't connect with the feedback directly, I threw them out. But if you're willing to take the time to listen to every little thread and tease it apart, you will learn the language of your subconscious. That's so key. I can't even. So let me get back to this. So after viewing a session through this lens and going through the feedback, I've realized that my subconscious, much like myself, is quite literal in how it follows movement commands to a T. Now, I'm on the autism spectrum. So when people talk to me, sometimes they'll say something jokingly and I'll take it literally, right? So I remote view the same way. And I found that when I task myself, how does it feel here? My mind will jump straight into how it feels. When I say, what does it look like? My mind will use visual cues. What does it say? And I know that sounds basic to you guys, but I'm trying to emphasize the importance of your words, of the power and the magic behind movements when you're doing RV, especially in like a spatial 3D space. Because for me, I was getting a mixture of both symbolic and literal, and it was all jumbled up and I didn't know what was what. However, I realized by teasing out my own subconscious language, if I'm careful and intentional and consistent with my movement commands and self-tasking, then I know the data that comes in is a function of that request. It's literal, or it's symbolic, or it's emotion-based, and so on. Okay, so here's a real-life example of the session that I'm going to include next. So in this session, I had a mandala of glowing gold light, and shortly after that, what looked like lava flowing out over land. Now, this occurred while I was remote viewing a statue in Vietnam of Jesus Christ. And both of these were very symbolic. And after taking the time to really tease apart what my subconscious meant in its own language, what feels correct is that the mandala was the halo seen around the head of the religious pictures of this being. And the lava to me represented the spread of the religion that this statue stood for. Now, whether you take this lava as symbolic for the destruction of pre-existing culture or as a nutrient-rich material that eventually aids in soil fertilization, that's up to you. But again, the point is that I used to throw out data like this because it wasn't clear and didn't match the target feedback. But with Birdie's advice, I'm going to start listening to my subconscious and opting to learn its language. And I'm sure that that will enhance my accuracy over time. I also want to bring up one more real-life example that happened from this remote viewing session. I noticed a data packet that came in when I did the movement task of what would I regret not reporting if I ended the session now, something like that. And what I got was this amorphous blob with the color and texture of a marshmallow. Normally I would have thrown that out. But I realized this was a moment, this was a symbol that I had seen in a previous remote viewing session and in other remote viewing practice targets, wherever there's white stone statues of religious significance. I always get this blobby marshmallow guy. It's weird. And that always happens. So, I've learned a word in the lexicon of my subconscious. White blob marshmallow thing, it's a statue, it's white, and it has religious significance. So I think it's important to reiterate that the RV process seems to be a bit like dreaming while awake. So why not treat the data as you would when teasing out the subtle meanings found in the language that your subconscious uses in dreams? Many of the people who are going to see this video are using dream journals to keep track of their dreams. Maybe you're practicing lucid dreaming or astral projection, and you've learned that, oh, when I wrote that down and really reflected on it, I got the meaning out of my dreams. Remote viewing is no different, in my opinion. So that's it, guys. After this follows the audio clip of the session, and I'm going to include me kind of narrating moments where I realized later what this meant to my subconscious. I hope this helps you get out of your slump. Initial impression that I'm latching onto is an airy, open, flying sensation, movement through air unencumbered. So it was sort of like a vertical figure eight, but then at the top it just kind of kept flying up and to the right, curving down and to the right. This feels soft, velvety, pettable. I find myself petting this. Chunks of the ideogram remind me of music notes in shape. Where am I? I feel like there's this open area for like the 2/3 of the scene, and then the bottom third is like ground. I'm sort of bobbing up and down in the center of that space. I feel like there's structures beneath me, repeating patterns of man-made structures, square shapes and rectangles, dull coloration of a city. And that's in this part of the ideogram that's sort of like a music note shape. Let's see. Do I want to stay in the air? Let's go with the first part of the ideogram, that sensation of swift movement through air. My intention is to go to that section now. Got an immediate sense of heaviness with a sort of dull hum, almost like it's happening right between my eyes. Sort of a heavy pressure and weight. It's something that I can press against and move. But when I release my pressure on it, it comes back to its original position slowly. Kind of reminds me of like streamers hanging. You know, it reminds me of that game that we used to play as kids, that parachute game, where the class would all grab the edges of a parachute and waft it up and down while the lucky kid got to lay underneath it in the center. Kind of watch it billow up and billow back down. Press against it, and it was light as air, but it was still there. I feel like I want to stay in this upper section of whatever this scene is, where the cityscape is below. I don't really want to go down there. I'm much freer up here, but I think I need to in order to access the next section of this ideogram. So the upper sky part is the first gentle curve sloping downward to the right, with a sort of pillowy thing that I like to push against. And then the next section is that music note part of the ideogram that becomes kind of complicated and convoluted and twists and turns on itself. I feel like, let's see what that is. I feel like the beginning of the scene, I'm just barely tilting forward and down to look down at it. I feel like it's a bunch of flat roofs that are dull in color, kind of mildew colored, like from moisture that's rained and then dried, rained and dried over and over again, and it leaves that like kind of residue on the tops of the roof. I find myself not wanting to go down to wherever this is. I just want to stay here and look down. Why would I feel that way? There's now an eye looking at me under my eyelids. Why would I feel that way? Well, let's go down in there anyway. In my mind's eye, there are these dystopian, flat, dull gray, metal building walls and edges that I see as I go past them, going straight down, like a bunch of tall buildings. but made of metal on the exterior. So this still feels like I'm now on a sidewalk of a city, with lots of complicated moving parts all around me. But nothing's in motion yet. I feel like it's all paused. I'm gonna hit play. I'm tempted to go with the first thing that my mind drew when I came down to the ground, which was cityscape with a man walking on the sidewalk sipping a cup of coffee, but the visual in that was too clear. I think that's imagination, so I'm just gonna still myself and jump back in a minute here. This is just an AOL throwaway thought. What if I was inside of a microchip and to me it looked like a city? That'd be cool. I'm gonna keep moving further along the ideogram. So it curves down to the right and then back up and begins its ascent up and to the right. I'm going to probe this part of the ideogram here. I feel like I'm in a smaller space now, like inside of a cube or a box. There's an indoors feeling, like a room with no windows. Small room. It feels old-fashioned down here, like a lot of chrome on things, or just outdated decor. For a moment I felt like I was in a morgue, you know, where the room where they put all the bodies in the wall, the little door. So I'm getting these sort of complex mandala shapes. Like if you squint your eyes while you're looking at a light, I feel like some aspect of them is sort of gold in color. Emotionally, I feel like it's beautiful. So very subtly I'm getting what reminds me of the shape of lava slowly rolling across land, how it's just a few inches above the surface and has that rounded edge to it. But there's like an expansive element to this. I just see from above a vehicle down below, sort of a gray or whitish color, driving in between buildings. It's interesting because a lot of this, the viewpoint has been like a drone over a city looking down at roads. So I'm going to start at the beginning of the ideogram again here. Just probe it in my mind. Give my left brain something to do and see if anything just comes in. Yeah, the beginning definitely feels like I start out like above a skyline, above a city. Maybe even some helicopters or some sort of aerial movement, aerial motion happening. This does not feel like a friendly place. To be honest, it kind of feels like a war zone. Everything about this target gives off a sense of like foreboding and being very careful about how you travel through it. And I'm reminded again while I'm in this sky part of it that there's definitely like what looks like tall rectangular structures beneath me. The air here is kind of thick with some sort of smoke or residue. Go to the second part of the ideogram, the music note. Feels drier now. The city feels like Middle East. What's something I would regret not sharing about this section of the ideogram? I'm seeing that there are some roads that are roadblocked with debris and rubble. I feel like this is a very littered city with, you know, the type like plastic bags blew onto vertical structures and just stayed there. And over the months and years of the wind flapping, they just became shredded, but stayed there. That's the feel of this place. Something about being careful the way that you go on the roads. Still seeing that vehicle down below me on the streets, carefully choosing which roads to go through. Move to inside of that vehicle. Observe and report. There's anxiety and panic within this vehicle as if a medical emergency has occurred. Instantly I got like blurred vision, or like a quick, instant, fast motion of something whirring past my field of vision. Almost like a seeing double, like a split screen. There's two of something that's relevant to how does it feel to be in this space. Yelling, I hear the engine revving. Proprioception. What's the size of this vehicle? How big does it feel? Feels it's hard, I don't know. Is there anything else relevant about this target that I should bring up to complete the tasking? Okay, I'm seeing something sort of like a marshmallow shape. I think that's just a data packet. Let me grab it and focus on it. So when I grasp it and place it over my head, I feel like the visual I get and the way that it makes me feel is like the life energy is draining out of my body. Like I can see it like dripping out of me from my head to my toe through my feet. AOL death. And then all that's left is just this light. I think I'm going to stop for today. Target feedback. Vung Tau, Vietnam. The biggest Jesus Christ statue on Earth. Aerial video by drone footage. Interesting. I can already tell you that the very end part that I got of the guy standing there with the color leaving his body from his head down through his feet and just remaining this sort of marshmallow color white. That's the color of the statue. That's interesting. It's interesting that I added this whole story of a death and stuff. But looking at this footage, it's definitely a very chaotic city. A lot of traffic, a lot of twists and turns, some high-rise buildings. And what's funny is I've remote viewed this target before, so I think my mind didn't focus on the statue so much. It kind of looked at the landscape, which is forested with moderately tall buildings, some tall buildings on a coastline, beach line. I don't know if it's polluted in the city or not, but it definitely looks congested. And there's a ton of footage of the drone just flying over the city, looking at cars driving on streets beneath it.